On this edition of Dspl Weekly, Cambridge goes for a 4-0 start against Pignite. The Ducklets attempt to give San Antonio their first loss of the season. And Aussie and Colorado put on a show. All this and more as we recap Week 4 in the Dork Side Pokemon League. Next. Hello, I am Grumm, your host of Dspl Weekly and the commissioner of the Dork Side Pokemon League. Before we get started, I'd like to ask you to like the video and subscribe as we are on our way to 200 subscribers. And with your help, we can get there before the playoffs start in November. Also, leave a comment below pledging your allegiance to your favorite Dspl team as we do one last look at Week 4. We had a potentially huge week with 9 games to be played with 3 makeups from Week 3 and our regularly scheduled 6 games from Week 4. Unfortunately, both Boston and Birmingham failed to report for either of their Week 3 or their Week 4 games. This is unfortunate for multiple reasons. The first reason, as a result of failing to report for either game, Boston forfeits their Week 3 matchup against the Aussie Illusion and their Week 4 matchup against the Pignite. Both games will end in a 3-0 result in favor of Pignite and Aussie. Birmingham will also forfeit both their Week 3 and Week 4 matches, giving the San Antonio Spheal and Cambridge Clodsires 3-0 victories. This means there will not be a change at the bottom of the standings at the end of this week, as Birmingham will remain in 11th place at 0-4 with a -12 differential, and Boston remains in 12th at 0-4 with a -14 differential. The second reason these results are unfortunate is as the commissioner of the league, I have to act in the best interest of the league, the general managers, and the fans. As such, I am naming an interim general manager to both Birmingham and to Boston. Effective Week 5, the Birmingham Bowflins will be overseen by interim general manager Cornman, who may lack in experience but makes up for it with an eager mindset and enthusiasm for the sport. Boston's interim general manager will be a familiar face to some as coming off of a Week 3 friendly victory, manning the Delaware Delphoxes, general manager Hobb will take over in Boston and lead the Bronzors for the rest of the season. These two will have full control of the roster and matchups week to week, making fans of the league excited to see what moves they make and making some general managers stand up and prepare for much harder battles than they were originally planning for. Fortunately for Pignite and Cambridge, they were able to get their matchup from Week 3 in by the deadline, and we will start a recap of Week 4, oddly enough, with a Week 3 matchup between Pignite and the Cambridge Clodsires. Pignite has a chance to finish Week 4 at 3-1 and give Cambridge their first loss, but with a win, Cambridge will be at the very least in the top 2 seeds. Pignite brings a bulkier setup Annihilate, Choice Scarf Hisuian Zoroark, and Choice Scarf Hoopa Unbound to outspeed Dragapult, Taunt Sableye to stop hazards from going up. Gengar this week has an Air Balloon to provide the Pignite with an Earthquake switch-in, and General Manager Didac finishes off the team this week with Palossand, who walls Regieleki while also being a good defensive mon for the team. Cambridge did their homework and ran the calcs this week clearly, as they come in with a Dragapult wearing an Assault Vest, as well as having Great Tusk getting a boost with Knockoff. Terra Captain Clawitzer comes in with a favorable matchup with Mega Launcher, Choice Spec boosted Dark Pulses and Water Pulses. Rapska offers a Trick Room option, and Mabostiff makes its season debut with a Choice Scarf and this Stakeout ability, ready to do big damage. Pignite leads Hoopa Unbound across from Cambridge's Dragapult, but it wasn't a Hoopa. In fact, it was Hisuian Zoroark who goes for the Shadow Ball, which would knock out had the Dragapult not been wearing an Assault Vest. This allowed Dragapult to U-turn out and bring in Great Tusk. Zoroark swaps to Palossand, who takes a Colbur Berry nerf knockoff in its place. After a couple turns, Clawitzer comes in as Palossand recovers HP with a Shore Up. Now facing a strong move, Pignite predicts a Dark Pulse and brings in Sableye, who instead eats a Water Pulse, giving Cambridge the first lead of the match. On the next turn, Pignite sends out Palossand, who goes down to another Water Pulse, extending the Clodsires' lead to 6-4. Pigsite decides to use this opportunity to bring in Annihilate in an effort to scare off Clodsire. But the gun with the shrimp attached to it stays in, takes a Drain Punch, and counters back with a Water Pulse that takes Annihilate to below half health. Dragon Bolt comes in on the next turn as General Manager Duff Guy Pat correctly predicts another Drain Punch from Annihilate. General Manager Didac follows up that correct prediction with one of his own as he sends out Hoopa Unbound to take a neutral Shadow Ball, but it's immune. Knowing that it's Hisuian Zoroark in disguise, Pat swaps to Mabostiff, who takes the Shadow Ball for 30% of its health. And faced with having to sacrifice a Pokemon or letting the Mafia Dog take out Zoroark, Didac swaps in Annihilate to take the crunch, giving Mabostiff its first knockout of the season and giving Cambridge a commanding 6-3 lead. A few turns later, after some defensive switches, Gengar has a chance to get the first knockout for the Pigseye, hitting his Specs-boosted Shadow Ball on Rabsca, but gets the short roll, leaving Rabsca at 1% health. This allows it to get a Trick Room up, and on the next turn take out Gengar and itself due to Life Orb Recoil on the next turn, bringing the game to 5-2 as Pigseye's only Mons left have Choice Scarfs in Trick Room. Clodsire gets its third knockout of the game, taking out Zoroark on turn 16, and Hoopa Unbound survives a Water Pulse to knock out Clodsire, giving the Pigseye their only knockout of the game before Great Tusk comes in and finishes off the game, giving Cambridge a 4-0 victory. Cambridge doubles up with their win total coming into the week and at least keeps pace with San Antonio for the end of the week, pending San Antonio's match result against Long Island. Clodsire nabs Pokemon of the game with 3 knockouts this week, bringing its total to 6 on the year. Rabsca takes the league lead in field assists with 2 Trick Room assists this week and also gets a knockout. Cambridge will get the first crack at new Dork Side Pokemon League interim general manager Hobb next week as the Clods will host the Boston Bronzors. Pigseye takes this one on the chin. They did all the prep work right, but they just couldn't get on track after turn 1. Hoopa Unbound showed off some good chops this week, taking an incredibly strong Water Pulse and living to get the knockout, the only one in the game for the Pignite. They'll leave week 4 2-2 thanks to the forfeit from Boston, but hope to get over 500 for the first time this season next week as they'll host the Colorado Doug Trio. We head to Arizona as the 3rd place Diamondbacks welcome the 8th place British Bangers to the desert. Arizona comes into this matchup at 2-1 in hopes of keeping up with the likes of Cambridge, while British hopes that they can even up their record, getting to 2-2 with an impressive victory this week. Arizona's team this week consists of Black Sludge Poison Touch Sneasler, Never Melt Ice Iron Bundle, Covert Cloak Ting-Lu, Assault Vest Kamala to deal with hazards, Heavy Duty Boots Kilowattrel, who is a Terra Captain, as well as fellow Terra Captain Delphox with Calm Mind Leftovers. British brings their defensive core of Leftovers Quagsire, Leftovers Curse Setup Garganacl, and Black Sludge Toxapex opting no hazards, instead of going for Haze and Toxic and physical stabs. Joining them this week are Scarf Meowscarada to outspeed Bundle and Sneasler, Assault Vest Terra Captain Abomasnow, and making their season debut, first round pick Tinkaton with Fake Out support and Quick Claw. Kilowattrel and Meowscarada are leads for this matchup as Meowscarada shows off its Scarf item on turn 1, outspeeding for a U-turn to bring in Garganacl, who dodges a Hurricane from Kilowattrel. Garg takes a Volt Switch and hits the swapped in Ting-Lu with Assault Cure, but Covert Cloak prevents the secondary effect of the mood from happening. And in classic British Bangers fashion, the two teams take turns pivoting individual matchups, with the biggest move being Abomasnow coming in on turn 11 for Quagsire to take a Freeze Dry from Iron Bundle. On turn 12, Abomasnow Terras into a full Ice type, taking a flip turn as Bundle swaps to Delphox. Delphox Terras on the next turn as Garganacl comes in on a Fire Terra boosted Flamethrower for a little damage. Delphox ducks out as Ting-Lu comes back out, and we almost repeat the process step for step. That is until turn 24 when AW brings Kilowattrel in on an Earthquake from Quagsire. Having already missed one Hurricane, Kilowattrel nails its second one, getting the first knockout of the match as Quagsire faints, giving the Diamondbacks a 6-5 lead. Garganacl comes back out, and a repeat of turn 2 as Volt Switch into Ting-Lu allows Garganacl to recover to near full health. The backs show off the sheer power of Ting-Lu as it goes for an Earthquake that nearly takes out Garganacl, who sets up on a Curse. Garganacl is in a bad way, and British decides to sacrifice Tinkaton on the next turn as Ting-Lu lands another EQ that takes out the first round pick, giving Arizona a 6-4 match lead. Meowscarada comes in and correctly predicts the switch, going for a knockoff that hits Sneasler for about 40% and removes the Black Sludge. More defensive pivoting as we get to turn 31 as Abomasnow swaps in to take a Thunderbolt from Kilowattrel for a quarter health. An Ice Shard does do over half of Kilowattrel's health worth of damage, but it is not enough to take down the bird as it finishes off Ice Terra Snowman with another Thunderbolt, giving Arizona a 3-mon lead. But with half of its team well within knockout range for Meowscarada, this one is far from over. Meowscarada forces the switch in as Arizona sacks Kamala, bringing the score to 5-3, and Delphox comes out. Threatening a knockout with Flamethrower, Toxapex comes in for Meowscarada as Delphox takes the switch to set up Calm Mind. However, a +1 special attack Psychic is not enough to take down Toxapex, who counters with a big liquidation that lowers the defenses of Delphox by 1 stage. Delphox goes for a Flamethrower to cover a potential switch-in, and it is enough to take down Toxapex, leaving British with just 2 Pokemon. Meowscarada secures the revenge knockout using Knockoff to finish off the Firefox and bring the score to 4-2, but resources are just becoming too small for British here. Sneasler comes in and goes for a close combat onto Garganacl, who takes it and goes down, leaving Meowscarada alone against Arizona's last 4 Pokemon. British has played well as it could, but after knocking out Kilowattrel so Sneasler could reset its defense drops, a Flower Trick just isn't enough to knock out the Hisuian Pokemon, who lands a Dire Claw to give Arizona the 3-0 victory. As I said, British played about as well as they could, lacking the firepower needed to really push Arizona further, but they have to be happy with how they played. Meowscarada, especially with all 3 knockouts. Tinkaton got a layer of hazards up in its debut and may return next week as the British Bangers look to take on the Corpus Christi Crobats, who potentially enter next week a game ahead of British as the Bangers now sit at 1-3. Arizona is happy as they don't lose ground this week with Cambridge as the win puts them at 3-1. Sneasler and Kilowattrel continue to impress and impose, each getting 2 knockouts this week as Sneasler continues to climb the knockout ladder of the league. We'll see if that continues as the fast Pokemon in Arizona have to answer the Trick Room problem in Aussie as the Illusion welcome the Diamondbacks next week. After some event-filled matches and before we get to even more action-packed matches this week, why don't you check out dspl.grumm.tv to keep up to date with the Dork Side Pokemon League. From standings to free agents, from rosters to schedules, and everything else you could all want. All can be found at dspl.grumm.tv. That's dspl.grumm.tv. Now let's get back to the recap. We head south for our next battle as the Corpus Christi Crobats come into this battle in 10th place and a chance to move up with the Bangers' loss, taking on the 4th place Minnesota Doduos, who will keep up with the upper half of the league with a win this week. The 1 and 2 Crobats bring their core of Gallade, having a Razor Claw this week to increase crit chances, Garchomp with heavy-duty boots, which seems unneeded, and Charizard with leftovers, as well as Rillaboom with a confusing throat spray. Making their season debuts this week are Lycanroc Midnight with Rocky Helmet and Donphan with its sturdy ability and a metal coat to boost its Gyro Ball. General Manager Bask in Minnesota looks to go from 2-1 to 3-1, leaning on the same 6 that they have had all season in Throat Spray Noivern, Choice Scarf Lycanroc, Choice Specs Greninja, Salazzle, and Jolteon, and Choice Band Cinderace. Minnesota leads Noivern while Lycanroc Midnight leads for the Crobats. Noivern lands a Dragon Pulse, but it doesn't take Lycanroc down, leaving Noivern open to a counterattack, but CJ instructs Lycanroc to go for a Bulk Up, missing out on a chance to take the advantage early. Bass takes the chance and lands another Dragon Pulse, taking down Lycanroc Midnight and giving Minnesota a 6-5 lead on turn 2. Charizard comes out next for Corpus Christi and it takes a Boom Burst, which activates Noivern's Throat Spray, giving it a special attack boost. Charizard lands a Dragon Pulse of its own, but it's not enough to take down Noivern, who finishes off with a Dragon Pulse, making the lead 6-4 Minnesota. Garchomp comes out and is offered to the table of Noivern, as Noivern claims another victim, knocking out Garchomp to give Minnesota a 3-mon lead with a Dragon Pulse. Rillaboom comes out next and does not get blessed by the lady's fate, as Noivern lands its Hurricane for a 4th knockout this game, putting this one out of reach despite Donphan and Gallade each getting revenge knockouts on Noivern and Greninja. Cinderace finishes off the Crobats and Gallade, and Minnesota wins this one 4-0. Corpus Christi could have had this one, funnily enough. They matched up well and even got the right lead, but thinking Bask would do anything other than attack was a mistake by CJ. Could have gone to Donphan right away to at least get the revenge knockout instead of letting 4 Pokemon fall, but all of our general managers are all learning in one way or another. Corpus Christi will get another chance to learn what a W feels like as they look to end their losing streak at 3 against the British Bangers next week. Minnesota got back on the winning side of things following their loss in Week 3 to Arizona, and the 4-0 victory gives them the differential advantage over Arizona, putting the Doduos in 3rd place. Neuvern showed out in a big way with 4 huge knockouts, including 2 one-hit KOs. Minnesota will look to remind the league next week that damage move go Burr as they face the potentially undefeated San Antonio Spheal. In our second to last match of the week, we make our way to the Rocky Mountains as the 9th place Colorado Dugtrios take on the 7th place Aussie Illusion. General Manager Brazilian Fury is looking to turn the first win of the season into a winning streak as they're 1-2 entering this matchup. Tackling the Trick Room this week for Colorado is Galarian Slowbro with Leftovers and Regenerator, newly named Terra Captain Sudowoodo with Rocky Helmet, and Iron Ball Scizor to underspeed in Trick Room. Outside of Trick Room, Colorado is going to rely on Life Room Tornadus T, Heavy Duty Boots Blaze Paldean Tauros, and Leftover Zapdos. Aussie has a chance to end the week 3-1 with a win here thanks to the forfeit in Week 3 from Boston. General Manager Aussie Marcus will look to his common Trick Room core of Life Orb Diancie, Leftovers Hatterene, Leftovers Cresselia, Life Orb Terra Captain, Terra Ground Copperajah, Assault Vest Iron Hands, and Knockout Leader King Gambit with his cool black glasses. Aussie leads with Cresselia right away, and Colorado leads with their slowest boy with a gun, Glowbro. Trick Room goes up, which benefits the Slowbro, even though it doesn't quite have the power needed to punish Cresselia for getting Trick Room up. After a couple defensive turns of pivoting from Colorado and after Trick Room expires and gets put back up, we get some turns of consequences. Copperajah terrestrializes into a ground type, landing a now stab-boosted Bulldoze onto a switching-in Galarian Slowbro, giving the Illusion a 6-5 lead. Sudowoodo tries to avenge his fallen Dugtrio comrade, but a Woodhammer is not enough to take out the Copperajah, who answers with another Bulldoze that knocks out the wannabe tree and extends Aussie's lead to 6-4, leaving Colorado with just Scizor and Trick Room. Scizor finishes off the Copperajah, bringing the game to 5-4 in favor of the Aussie Illusion. That lead goes back to 2 Pokemon in favor of Aussie when Iron Hands follows up a Fake Out with a Fire Punch that eliminates Scizor, leaving Colorado in a bad way under Trick Room. With Aussie having all 3 of their setters still, and 2 Pokemon who can punish Colorado in Trick Room, Brazilian Fury must play a near-perfect game from this point on. Oddly enough, it is Marcus's gameplay that keeps Colorado in this, as Cresselia is unable to finish off the Tauros in Trick Room, leaving it at just above a third of a health left as Trick Room expires and Zapdos comes in. But again, Trick Room goes up, and Cresselia stays in for the full duration despite Iron Hands having a good matchup against the Zapdos. Eventually, Iron Hands does come out, but it's too late and the 4th Trick Room expires. By turn 29, Trick Room is set back up, this time by Hatterene, who can punish Colorado, but instead of going for a Dazzling Gleam that would have at the very least put Tornadus T in range for another Fake Out to knock it out, Hatterene strangely goes for a Swords Dance, which allows Tornadus to land a huge critical hit with Hurricane that also confuses Hatterene. This is the first confusion from Hurricane for Tornadus this season, and it couldn't have come at a better time as Hatterene hits itself in confusion on the next turn, taking itself out and giving Colorado a little bit more wiggle room, trailing Aussie 4-3. The good luck keeps coming for Colorado, as Diancie misses a Diamond Storm in the last turn of Trick Room. It doesn't stop there, as Diancie gets hit by a Hurricane, and it gets confused. Diancie hits itself in confusion as Heat Wave takes it down to below 20% health. Now, with no Trick Room up and in need of it in the worst of ways, Aussie swaps Diancie out for Cresselia, whose bulk seems enticing, but Tornadus is able to take it out with a Hurricane after rocks chip away at Cresselia, bringing the match to 3-3. But it quickly becomes a Colorado lead as Diancie falls to hazards put out by Sudowoodo, who nabs a knockout from the grave, giving Colorado a 3-2 advantage, but they're not quite out of it yet, not with the nuclear option of King Gambit in the back for Aussie. Iron Hands come out and lands a Fake Out for some chip, but that's it as the next turn Tornadus lands a Heat Wave, taking out the Robo Sumo for a 3-1 lead. And out comes out the Supreme Overlord itself, King Gambit. 1 Sucker Punch is all that's needed for Tornadus to go down, and the match now sits at 2-1. Now in the preview ahead of this match on stream, I said that this would have been a good week to run Defiant on Gambit with Tauros Intimidate, but Aussie Marcus kept with what worked and stayed with the Overlord ability. And ultimately that cost him, as 2 sucker punches at -1 attack are not enough to take down the Tauros, giving the Colorado Dugtrio a 2-0 victory over the Illusion. Colorado moves to 2-2, getting closer to looking at the playoffs as they will move up to 8th place. A big week for Tornadoes with 3 knockouts and 2 statuses as Torn continues to impress for Colorado. Colorado will look to continue their winning ways as they take on the Pig's Eye Pignite next week in a showdown of 500 teams. Aussie will also be 2-2, missing out on a chance to be in 6th place, looking at the playoffs, but there's still a good chunk of the season remaining, and Caparaja had another strong performance with 2 knockouts this week. Aussie will look to close out the first half of the season with a win next week as they face the Arizona Diamondbacks. And finally, we head to the East Coast as the 5th place Long Island Ducklets host the 1st place San Antonio Spheal in our premium matchup. General Manager Berger's squad comes into this matchup 3-0 thanks to a Week 3 forfeit, and stick with what's gotten them this far as they will bring the Sunsetter Torkoal, Choice Specs Walking Wake, Life Orb Roaring Moon, Heavy Duty Boots Volcanion, Special Attack Booster Energy on Iron Moth, and Heavy Duty Boots on Volcarona, who has setup potential. General Manager Johnner and the Ducklets come into this match following a win last week at 2-1, hoping to make San Antonio's record match their own at the end of this match, hoping that Life Orb Tornadus, Speed Boosting Booster Energy Iron Valiant, Choice Band Slacking, Terra Fairy, Life Orb Hisuian Electrode, Assault Vest Hisuian Samurai, and Damp Rock Murkrow with Prankster Rain Dance is enough to get them to 3-1. Torkoal leads San Antonio in battle for its 3rd consecutive match as Landorus T leads off for Long Island and immediately rocks San Antonio with an Earth Power. San Antonio finds itself down its Sunsetter down 6-5 on the very first move of the battle and in need of maximizing the remaining 7 turns of Sun. Walking Wake comes out, forcing Long Island to switch to Preserve Intimidate from Landorus, and Hisuian Samurai comes in and takes a strong Hydro Steam. Samurai is able to land 2 Ceaseless Edges on consecutive switch turns from San Antonio, leaving both Volcanion and Roaring Moon around or below half health. Roaring Moon doesn't waste time with a Dragon Dance or any kind of setup. No, they go for an Earthquake to take out the Hisuian Water Starter, evening the match at 5 apiece. This allows Hisuian Electro to come in, terrestrialize as a fairy, and make the match 5-4 with a Terra Fairy Blast to take down the Dark Dragon type. This brings out Volcarona, who gets a Quiver Dance up at the cost of about 35% of its health on a Volt Switch. Slacking comes in and Volcarona outspeeds it and lands a Will-O-Wisp before falling to a Giga Impact, giving Long Island a 5-3 lead even with a burnt Slacking. With the sun gone, San Antonio's options for power are dwindling, but Volcanion comes in and shows its natural power as it hits a huge flamethrower on Slacking, as it has to stay in to recharge from the Giga Impact. But Volcanion swaps to a Sludge Bomb, presumably predicting Electrode to come back in as a fairy type, but it's actually Landorus who comes in, who gets hit with the Sludge Bomb and gets poisoned. Lando easily outspeeds Volcanion and takes it out, giving it its 2nd knockout of the match and Long Island a commanding 5-2 lead that turns into a still heavy 4-2 lead after Iron Moth takes it out with a flamethrower in revenge. That lead then drops to 3-2 after Iron Moth lives a Psychic from Iron Valiant, but unfortunately for San Antonio, that'll be the closest they get to a comeback as Electrode comes in, takes its 2nd knockout on a Volt Switch, and brings in Murkrow. Murkrow decides to play around with its food as Walking Wake gets hit with a Thunder Wave to cut its speed in half. Then Murkrow goes for a Rain Dance to cut Flamethrower's damage in half. Long Island ends up sacking Slacking, potentially unintentional, as Burn from Volcarona finally claims Slacking following a Flamethrower on the switch-in. Electrode puts Wake out of its misery and puts a 1 in San Antonio's loss column as the Ducklets win 2-1. Long Island called their shot after this game, telling Duff Guy Pat, the general manager of the Cambridge Clodsires, to stay undefeated until their matchup in the final regular season game. That's a bit away, but Long Island moves to keep pace with the rest of the 3-1 teams as they too get to 3-1, though a couple late knockouts the last couple weeks have cost them in the differential, keeping them in 5th place. Hisuian Electro steals the Pokemon of the game from Landorus with 3 impressive knockouts, but Lando got this party started for the Ducklets. They'll get to welcome Cornman to the league as they'll face Birmingham next week. San Antonio learned the hard way that Mike Tyson was not lying when he said that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Iron Moth tried as best as it could with 2 knockouts to keep this team undefeated, but it was just too late in the match to have an impact. San Antonio joins Arizona, Minnesota, and Long Island at 3-1, but with them having the highest score differential, they'll only drop to second place. And they'll hope that's all they drop to, as they have a huge matchup next week against Minnesota. Now it's time we celebrate the best of week 4, starting with the best plays of the week, starting with number 5. Iron Moth lives a psychic from Iron Valiant and knocks out Iron Valiant. Number 4. Tauros intimidates King Gambit, surviving 2 sucker punches to clinch the game for Colorado. Number 3. Tornadus lands a critical hit Hurricane that confuses Hatterene, knocking it out on the next turn. Number 2. Assault Vest Dragapult lives Shadow Ball from Zoroark, switches into Great Tusk. Number 1. Earth Power Landorus takes out Torkoal. And now the top 5 Pokemon of this week's sets of battles. Number 5. Landorus of the Long Island Ducklets. Number 4. Hisuian Electrode of the Long Island Ducklets. Number 3. Meowscarada of the British Bangers. Number 2. Tornadus Therian of the Colorado Dugtrio. Number 1. Noivern of the Minnesota Doduos. Before we go, let's take a quick look at the standings as a whole now that we know the results of this week going into next week's battles. Cambridge is our last remaining undefeated team with an impressive 14 score differential. San Antonio holds second place with Minnesota, Arizona, and Long Island all also 3-1, but in order as they are due to their differentials. Pignite rounds out the playoff teams at 6 thanks to their differential being better than fellow 2-2 teams Aussie and Colorado, who sit in 7th and 8th respectively. British beats Corpus Christi out for 9th place, and Birmingham with new general manager Cornman and Boston with their new general manager Hobb round out the bottom of the standings at 11th and 12th. With about 6 weeks remaining, there's no one eliminated from the playoffs officially, but it's possible for even Boston to make a run of things and end up in the playoffs. We'll get to see the new look Boston and Birmingham as well as the entire league next week for Week 5. Week 5 streams live here on YouTube and on Twitch at twitch.tv/tgrum on Sunday, October 8th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Leave a like and subscribe to help us grow the league in this channel. And comment below who your top Pokemon and top plays of this week were. I'll see you all later in the week for our preview of Week 5. I am Grumm, Commissioner of the League and your host of the Dspl Weekly. I'll see you all next time.
Grumm TV thanks you for watching this presentation of the Dork Side Pokemon League.